Good afternoon. My name is Adam Hughes. I'm SOCM's East Tennessee organizer. Thank you so much for joining us for today's SOCM Spotlight. We will be recording this to share later. So please, if you are in the waiting room, keep your cameras off and keep muted. If you can put all your questions in the chat, I promise we'll get to them by the end of this event. But I am really happy to be joined by Lilith Sweeney and Hannah Freeman today. Lilith has been doing this work as a SOCM member, as a SOCM ally with the Knoxville Housing Coalition and with PSL for years, and has been SOCM's community fellow for the past 2 years now doing this work. And Hannah Freeman is a more newly minted SOCM member and the co-founder of the new Knoxville Area Tenants Union. So thank you both so much for joining us today. And I guess the first question, if you want to take it one by one, is how did you both get involved in this work and how did it bring you to SOCM?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. I got involved due to my own personal experiences back in 2015. I had been evicted illegally and I didn't know my rights around a whole bunch of different things, everything from maintenance issues and what makes a safe apartment and safe living area, and what's your ability to get money back from a landlord and how should these processes go. The fact that if you don't see a judge, you're not really being evicted. It's just a landlord forcing you out and it's a breach of contract. There were a lot of things like that I didn't know, and so I did end up out on the street. Part of my personal journey through all of this has been dealing with all that pain and moving forward and trying to learn more and more and more about these things so that I could pass them on to my friends and family. And then in 2020, there was a crisis that kind of went around about rent, where it was hundreds that were being evicted and no one had jobs, no one had work. You just can't pay your rent if you don't have work. And so SOCM mobilized, as well as the group that I'm with, Party for Socialism and Liberation. We were joined by the Democratic Socialists of America and started going to these courts in different places, trying to help people know their rights and know further information. That was the first time I had really interacted with SOCM. It made a huge impression on me, and I think within probably 1.5 years, 2 years, I had ended up joining SOCM. I came to kind of think of them as a community member, described them to me as the community union, which been very impressed and like it very much. Very happy to be here. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam, for having me and also just putting this together. And yeah, I am the epitome of until it happens to you organizer. I'm a tenant at the Rand Distillery, formerly known as Tanglewood, and overnight our property got bought and our rent was doubled. And since then, we've had a slew of maintenance issues and concerns building, and we really want some negotiation with our landlord. And we're just lucky enough and I'm lucky enough to be a part of a community that got together to address these issues as a collective, and we've shown how effective that was. Instead of just one individual going to your landlord and asking for something, it turns out that having multiple people in a complex voicing the same concern is very useful in being able to actually conquer your goals and what you need out of the place you're living. So yeah, we formed together, and just through multiple community meetings, reaching out to other Rand properties, we found needs across the board with this property management company. So once we kind of established that was something that wasn't just a Tanglewood or a Rand Distillery issue, we wanted to formalize our organization efforts. And so we came together and unionized. And so that's kind of how the genesis of Knoxville Tenants Union started, Knoxville Area Tenants Union started, or CATU. And yeah, we were really excited to have been working with SOCM since the beginning of this. We had very, very early on, one of our first meetings together as a community was in a laundry room. And Lily was actually there and present for that from the get. So SOCM has been so valuable, and there's not enough words to thank every single member who has reached out to help us, because we were in very similar shoes as Lily was just mentioning. We didn't know our rights. We didn't know what could and could not happen. And frankly, it's with the eviction guides and the legal aid support, we've helped neighbors be able to stay in their homes longer just at our one complex. So I'm really hopeful for this relationship, because I know that as successful as it's been here, I know it's only going to grow and help other people throughout Knox and surrounding counties, and hopefully statewide soon. So yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you both. SOCM's Knoxville chapter has been working on housing on and off as long as it's existed, as long as I've been on staff since October 2014. And this particular campaign around eviction protection, tenants' rights, has been basically ongoing since the beginning of the pandemic. Lily, can you share a little more about what that campaign's looked like? What are the major milestones we've been through? What are our campaign asks? And what have we learned along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of gone through this process of just making a list of questions and like trying to answer them. And this kind of started with everything from Know Your Rights documents, where we were gathering documents and trying to figure out like where do things like leave a hole missing? How do I file a maintenance complaint? How do I do this? How do I do that? And we've put together a really exhaustive document on a whole bunch of this stuff, which is our eviction defense guide. We published it earlier this year. We're very excited for everyone to see it. Please go and find it on our website at socm.org/projects. But we've also done like more intensive interventions, things like where we have been discussing the policy of a right to counsel. The idea that you would want or have a right in eviction court to have representation, to have someone who would be there on your side helping you get through the bureaucracies and legalities. We've expanded that over time to include things like housing navigators and maybe access to social workers and a few other things. And we have been like in deep discussion with the city. We participated in what's called a sprint program earlier this year in order to discuss these things. And we were very lucky to be joined by Carter Hall from the city and a few others, and have been in like really deep discussions on how this could work and on how we could make things better. And some of the other things that we've kind of been working on has been like just getting people to know your rights. Like me and Hannah have both talked about now, is like the fact that you don't really know what you're allowed to stand firm on and what you're not when you're a renter. And that's one of the biggest things, is like if you choose the wrong thing, you could just be out, is really the atmosphere. You don't have a lawyer in eviction court most of the time. You don't have all these other protections. Even what is named in law, you don't necessarily know how to file for. And so getting the cooperation and the like motivation for people to learn, like if you learn these things, it will help you. Like it is worth the effort. And we've been working really intensely on that. And what was the final part of the question, Adam?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know we've done a lot of learning on the way and maybe had even a few false starts, particularly when it comes to, working with tenants in apartment complexes. And I know that's something you've really taken to heart. What have we learned on the way, even when those learnings have not been easy?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we've learned is how important that community aspect is. That there's not going to be a time where like a single tenant invites us in and we're going to be able to like make a difference because of a single person. It has to be some kind of community movement, or we have to be thinking about building a community movement. Otherwise, you're exposed and alone. And as has been noted in this meeting before, like getting together, doing things together, united, is really what changes the balance at the end of the day. It's how firm are you willing to stand as a group, as 30, 40, 100 people if you can swing it. And yeah, I think like our biggest failures have been those times when we were unable to get that, and we were unable to help people stand firm and know their rights. And yeah, it's really heartbreaking when that happens.
Yeah, and then on the other side, the work that the tenants of the Rand at Tillery, that Hannah and so many others have done, has been rooted deeply in this idea of building your base and talking to your neighbors. Hannah, can you talk a little bit about the explicit asks that you're making of your landlord now, and how the process of developing those asks in like a real community focused way have come together?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, real big emphasis on community effort. This has never been a one woman, one man show. From the start, we had a neighbor very, very early on, July 27th. Right after we got bought on the 22nd, actually go door to door with a flyer to get us all in that laundry room to have that meeting. And then, of course, we did come up with what we thought was a reasonable negotiation with our property management. So our specific ask, when we put in our original petition, which was on August 4th, that had over 60 signatures, so over half of the complex, we have 105 units, was for a rate increase no more than 10% upon renewal. And this was to give the property time, give them time to get the property where they wanted it to be, in order to justify the new asking price. Our property was built in the 1980s. There's one tenant that has had a tarp over their damaged leaking roof for 2 months. We have black mold in some apartments, all those issues. So it's very easy to bring people together on issues when you're all experiencing some kind of injustice together. And in our case, it wasn't only the rent, it was also these maintenance concerns. So yeah, our ask also included in that petition just to have a reasonable date of notice of maintenance request and of a rent hike as well, or a rate increase. So we did not, unfortunately, get what we wanted out of the petition. We did receive an email back from Jennifer Outland, who is the Rand's COO, and she did offer us an additional 30 days after the date of vacate at the same rate, as long as you give a prior 60-day notice, which we have all identified was not enough, given the extremity that we are experiencing on property. So we're at the point now of renegotiating, and we have found that sticking together over the past couple months, and reaching out to literally as many people as possible. We've gotten together with groups at the University of Tennessee. We've gotten together obviously with council members, with Carter Hall as well, Aaron Reed, and a lot of other individuals, to try to figure out how we can best strategize to work this out, and make everybody happy, because at the end of the day, we don't really have any type of rent control. So what we're asking for is really just human decency, and letting us stay here long enough to figure something out so we can stay locally.
Earlier this month, SOCM put on an Organizing 101 training, which was a 5-hour or 4-hour, 30-minute plus lunch training going over the basics of community organizing. Lilith worked to help plan the agenda, the facilitation plan for this training, and Hannah, among other people from the complex, participated. Can you both talk a little bit about what that training meant, what you might have learned there, and what the idea of community organizing means in the context of the work you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. For us at the Randa Tillery, that training was everything. We really took it and started running right afterwards. So one thing that we did as a workshop was power mapping at the SOCM training, and we hadn't yet done that or thought about doing that, as well as the escalation or the tactic escalations chart. And we found that extremely useful, just because we had so many ideas and so many neighbors with lots of great ideas, but we didn't know where they fell on a timeline, or really what works best for what scenario. So as soon as we got done with the workshop, we were in a meeting with our neighbors, literally doing real time practice of the same exact thing we were doing in training. But it was, with what we're really facing, and that really did help us functionally improve our structure of how we're organizing. So that really solidified what we're doing is more than just this one community effort. What we're doing is really banding together to help all renters, and so that's what actually ultimately led us to creating the tenants union. So that workshop and learning the power of organizing and getting a better grip on one-on-one conversations that can be had with other renters, not necessarily in our umbrella, and collecting data, using those one-on-one conversations, and back to power mapping and all this. That is very valuable information that we have seen in real practice that has helped us progress quite a ways with it. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad that all went so well for y'all. We worked very hard on it. I know for me, like, that was kind of what we were hoping would come out of it, that like it would be, again, just re-highlight the like community aspect of this, of like that for systems like this and situations like this where they have so much backing and so much resources, the landlords do, that for tenants, like we will need at least somewhere near equal amounts of resources and education and organization. And yeah, that was something that definitely went into it, of like, we've got to be designing real strategies for moving forward. And it was, yeah, I'm just glad y'all loved it.
I'm going to invite again participants to put some questions for Hannah and Lilith in the chat. We will get to all questions, but since we're kind of approaching about 10 minutes left, one really important thing I want to ask both of you. You've done so much to build this base and move this work forward in Knoxville and Knox County. SOCM has members, I think, in 91 of the 95 counties of Tennessee, and really Knoxville is the only place that housing has been a focus. If someone wants to work on eviction defense work in their own communities, what's your advice to get started?
Yeah, I thank you for asking that, Adam, because I think it's really important, especially as this issue continues to get attention. And the number one answer to that is something we've continued to emphasize here, and that is get your community together. You cannot you can't run anything as a one man or a one woman army. So really soliciting your neighbors to see what the issues are that they're having that might be similar to yours. Is there any any ideas that you have as residents of your particular location as to how to improve the location? I know I've talked to some individuals from another property, Brookside Properties here in Knoxville. They're not associated with the Rand, obviously, but they really want a dog park. And they talked to neighbors, and it turns out they're not the only ones. And they're a pet-friendly apartment complex without one. So even just as simple as that, when it's not these major issues, right, is something that can get done, but not by yourself. So 100% talk to your neighbors, make friends. It's beneficial on multiple levels. Let's say your car breaks down and you need a ride to work. Your neighbors can be there to help you. If they need some sugar, they can come right over, right, and get a cup of sugar. It's that old school philosophy, but in practice, and it is really, really effective. And yeah, it honestly makes living where you're at feel a lot brighter and happier. We've had a lot of that feedback from neighbors. We had one of our neighbors say that, it's a whole new universe coming home now, because instead of just waving and awkwardly passing by, we're stopping and we're talking to people walking their dogs or just out jogging, or and it feels a lot more like home. And so it's great all around just to know your neighbors, but especially if you're really trying to fight against eviction defense and negotiate again with landlords. You need those neighbors on your side, and you need to make sure you're having those important conversations. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to second that, like, and just kind of go kind of cheesy, but like the power of friendship and that stuff. Like, a lot of our power as organizers, especially when it comes to this immediate community, like you don't choose who you live next to. Your landlord does. And so like the power of being able to make friends anywhere at any time, of like going in, just even if you don't have a good conversation with somebody, every time I pass someone on the street that I recognize, I'm like, I'm gonna wave to them. I'm gonna say, hey, I'm gonna ask them how their day's been. And just like laying that groundwork from the beginning of like the people that you see in your immediate area, and then building into something more, starting dinners, having people over. Again and again, what we've seen in doing this is that communities that talk to each other, that hang out with each other, are stronger. They are healthier. Like it's not just like a thing in our head of like, oh, I'm also just like happier here because I know these people. You're actually healthier, and your community is healthier, able to withstand things like rent increases, but also able to withstand things like diseases and other things where you can communicate and coordinate responses, or you can go and build what you need to build, or you can, like, those are all signs of health, and those are signs of like a community that is doing well. And I think those are the things that we should be aiming for. If you do that, like, it won't be an issue to have those hard conversations. You can just talk to people. They're your friends.
What's coming next for SOCM's Knoxville chapter, for CatU, and how can people be supportive?
Yeah, so for CatU, we're having a candlelight vigil on the 30th. This is to recognize those who are soon to be evicted or have been evicted. Going back to, again, the winter months are coming here soon, and that is a very hard time to have to deal with, being forced out of your home and being displaced. So most vigils that people are accustomed to are recognizing someone deceased, but I think it is just important, and we think it is just important to also remember that there are people here in front of us that we cannot forget about, that need help. So also you can find us on Facebook. We are getting together a membership brochure that will include the SOCM eviction defense guide. A lot of neighbors have found that very, very useful. And then as well as some other things, food pantry resources, and then access to our neighborhood newsletter as well. But then we'll have a fundraiser coming up in October, with more information posted to that Facebook page soon. So yeah, I'm looking forward for the relationship with SOCM to continue, because right now we are very local here to Knoxville. But as this conversation grows, we are really hoping to obviously take this pursuit to Nashville, to fight rent control in general. So yeah.
There's the other side to that too, of like, what can you do to set up to be ready for SOCM to help you? And I think just like paying attention to all the things that we've been talking about, of like, make sure you're talking to your neighbors, make sure you're educating yourself on things going on, make sure you're coming out and helping us organize so that you can have skills in order to do those things before things happen in your neighborhood that need help. We want to have an org that can help everybody, and we're trying to build that, but we've all got to start preparing ourselves and the organization for that. So that's what I would add on.
And I think we'd be happy to come to a lot of communities, a lot of different SOCM chapters, and give a version of this SOCM 101 training. Even if housing isn't your issue, just skill building is something that we've done for 51 years now and is super important. I'd also invite everyone who is Knox County based to join our Knox County chapter. We even have people who come from Anderson County to some of those meetings. We meet every fourth Thursday at 6 p.m. at St. Luke's Episcopal Church. So tomorrow, but then every fourth Thursday after that. And as well, we're really excited. We are working on kind of the follow-up to the eviction defense guide, which will be around maintenance and habitability issues. What are your rights? How can you keep yourself safe? How do you approach your landlord? So one final question to really end this in a positive note for the two of you. What has been inspiring in this work so far? And I mean, has there been a moment where you've seen the better world and the better Knoxville and Knox County that we're trying to build, and you've seen, you know, I think this can come into being. I think our work is going to pay off in the long term. When have you been inspired?
So many times. I I can't even tell you. We were all in a really hopeless place at the Rand at Tillery when we first found out that we were purchased and these things were happening. Seeing people come together like they have, getting frequent Facebook messages and calls, just how you doing, and you know, and just checking in, and then with SOCM's help with organizing and helping us really stick our nose to the grindstone and continue. Those things have given me not only just hope in our current situation, just restored some hope in humanity that we can go back and we can have small town communities and micro cells all over the city and really improve Knoxville altogether. And then, of course, we have those shining moments where we've had actual legislators or leaders reach out from the community, even developers that want to create affordable housing or figure out what we can do to get rid of application fees or whatever it might be. But those conversations were definitely not happening early July. And now that they even are being discussed at all, really gives me, shows me a brighter future to come. And yeah, I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just seeing all of the people kind of similarly, like who have been coming out to help. It's been, of course, city councilors and things like that, but in the struggle for the Tanglewood residents, we've seen residents from other apartment complexes with high rents coming to show and support. You know, they kind of understand that the connection there, that like we are really in some ways like battling the same thing and like under the same circumstances. And a lot of people right now are really, really willing to help other people, even though it doesn't necessarily mean help is coming for them. And I think that's a great sign of what's to come. If we can build on that and like expand it and grow it, then we've got a real chance of getting all these things, everything we want. So, yeah.
Well, I'm fired up. Lilith and Hannah, it's such a privilege to be organizing alongside both of you, helping to grow something bigger, and just having this dialogue, having a real thoughtful conversation about how we can do that across this state. So thank you both for joining us. And thank you to everyone who's joining this Zoom live, watching this on YouTube or Facebook as a follow-up. We're going to keep continuing to do these SOCM spotlights to highlight the amazing work that's going on throughout the state in housing, but also education, environmental issues, so many places where communities have gotten together and really gotten some tangible wins by standing together. So thank you everyone for participating. And once more, huge thank you to Lilith and Hannah.
Thank you again, Adam.